take extreme ownership and responsibility of your life, regardless of how you grew up or came up, whether you didn't have your father or mother, that figure there. I would say learn how to use that as motivation. My father was there, but he wasn't there emotionally. I use it as motivation and said, okay, I'm going to be the father that I never had, even though my father that wasn't there is the father I wish he always was. I use those things as motivation to succeed.
My friend, your role as a father is critical. You are so important. The way that you show up and love and serve your family will literally change the world. 3 nuggets that hit me from my conversation with my new friend Otis Amey today are: 1, set intentions around what you want your kids to know when they move out. 2, when you're at your kid's sports game, don't coach your kids, let coaches coach. And 3, what is the inheritance you are leaving to your children's children? What is up, my friends? Welcome to Fatherhood Field Notes podcast, where I interview incredible fathers, gaining wisdom from their lives, their stories, for you and I to grow in our own craft. I'm your guide, Ned Shout, father to 5 kiddos, currently ages 11 to 18, and husband to my rad wife, Sarah, working on our 20th year of marriage. So yeah, my friend, I'm in the thick of it, and I am working daily to rebel against the low expectations our world sets for fathers and create a world where fathers know who they are as they show up for their families. You and I have the greatest opportunity to impact our world through the way we embrace our fatherhood role. Now, this episode is brought to you by the Adventure of Fatherhood, helping men discover their powerful fatherhood role and build their fatherhood skills. The role of fathers to serve, guide, provide, protect, and of course, find joy and have fun in the messiness of it all. Today's guest is my friend Otis Amey, and we have an incredible conversation around life, family. So enjoy meeting my new friend, Otis. All right, Otis, welcome to Fatherhood Field Notes. How you feeling today?
Doing good, Nat. It's awesome. Start of summer break for my kids. So adjusting to that a little bit, but yeah, excited to be a part of this.
Yeah, man. Love it. Okay. So our mutual friend, Clay Rojas, had, when I asked him, hey, do you know any great dads I should have on the podcast to talk fatherhood? Your name came to the top of his mind. Why do you think your name came to the top of his mind?
I don't know, man. Maybe we'll hear more during this session and during this podcast. But I know me and my wife were just talking about how, unfortunately, sadly, it's rare that, I've been with the same woman since high school. So she's been with me through before I even signed my letter of intent, before success in college, before the NFL, and through all of my knucklehead years. And, we prayed to have some healthy children. We've been blessed with 3 of them. And I've just been by their side in their corner, training them up in the ways of the Lord. So I don't know, why Clay recommended me, but I just try to stay in my lane, man, and, and do what I can to be the best father that I can for my little ones.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you bring up something interesting, which I'll ask just out the gate. So, how many years you been married?
Almost 15, so 14.
Okay, 14 years, and you've been with your wife since high school.
Whatever year it is, yeah. So 24 years.
Okay.
Yes.
So then, question for you is, I know that your life shifted and you found your faith at a little bit later, like early 20s. Is that when you say you kind of like gave your life to God?
2006.
Okay, 2006.
Yeah. After being released from the 49ers is when I surrendered my life to Christ and started my faith journey.
So interesting. And then how was that transition? So, okay, one of the greatest gifts we give our kids is the relationship with our spouse, right? Is for them to see this. And we'll talk about that a little bit. But interesting, like when you decided to make this shift and dedicate your life to the Lord, how was that with your relationship with your spouse, right? Because was she already a believer? Did she come along with you? What did that look like?
Yeah, she will credit me with leading her to the Lord. And so she grew up in East Oakland, and her parents were never married. She got into trouble when she was younger, and her mom said, you got to get out of Oakland. And so one of her cousins actually went to my high school in Union City, which is 25 minutes away. So she would ride the BART there. That's how we ended up meeting. And so she saw my relationship, she saw my faith, and it attracted her to, the Lord. And that's when she ended up, surrendering her own life to the Lord.
Wow. That's so cool. Just that you guys had that journey together and still together now, especially with the ups and downs of what the athlete life could be, and then shifting out of that. So incredible. All right. The first question I typically ask is, how old do you find yourself today?
How old do I find myself? That's such an interesting question, right? Because people think I'm younger than I look. I'm 42. People think I'm about 35.
Yeah, I would have guessed like early 30s for sure. But I'm like trying to do the math in my head of the dates.
But because I played football for most of my life, I have stem cells in my left ankle. There's times where I feel older. There's times where I don't. So,
Yeah.
I mean, how do I feel? I probably feel like legitimately 40.
Yeah. Love it, dude. And then, okay, you've been married for almost 15 years, and then you have 3 kiddos. What are their ages?
Yeah, oldest, my daughter is 11. Then there's a boy in the middle. He's 8. He's a big 8. And then our youngest, the feisty one, she's 6.
Love it. And then where do you go? And are you done? Is it the three and done?
Our plan is to be done. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I couldn't imagine starting all over.
Another set of diapers and crying and
right.
all the stuff.
Man. Yeah.
And then where do you guys do life?
We are in, it's technically not a city, but it's called Natomas. It's right by the Sacramento airport, north of Natomas.
And then I love and hate this question, but what is it that you do now to provide value in the world and provide for your family?
Yeah. Those things are directly in alignment. I'm blessed to be able to do what I know that God has wired me and called me to do. So I actually have a lot of things on my plate. I'm a pastor at a local church here called Midtown Church. I am a motivational speaker, keynote speaker. So I speak to small sales team, but I am really thriving when I'm traveling around the country and I'm sharing my story, what we would call our testimony, but sharing my story, doing assemblies. So when I travel around the country, I've been to most states. I get a chance to speak to the entire student body, no matter how many assemblies that takes. And I share my story and get a chance to even share faith on the side with a lot of the students, because it comes out, right? I can't directly preach Christ, but it comes out. And so that's what I do to provide for my family. Those two things. Yeah.
Beautiful, man. So cool when your passion, your giftings gets to align with that. Now, if you were to say in 1 to 2 minutes, you have an opportunity to get in front of 500 students at an assembly right now, what is it that you want to communicate to them? So like when they're walking out of that assembly, out of that gym, what is it that you wanted to have shared with them that triggered something in their heart, mind, or soul? What is that thing?
Yeah, there's a few things I would say that take extreme ownership and responsibility of your life, regardless of how you grew up or came up, whether you didn't have your father or mother, that figure there. I would say learn how to use that as motivation. My father was there, but he wasn't there emotionally. I use it as motivation and said, okay, I'm going to learn. I'm going to be the father that I never had, even though my father that wasn't there is the father I wish he always was. I use those things as motivation to succeed. I would say that I would tell anyone to examine their circle of trust, the people that they're surrounding themselves with. I went to the biggest high school in Northern California. Only keep in contact with 2 of those people. Social media doesn't count. And so don't waste all your time trying to be who you really aren't and try to be cool to these people that you're not even going to be in community or relationship with down the road. Like, stay in your lane, serve as much as you can. I learned my purpose through serving at the YMCA and Boys and Girls Club. As a natural introvert, I realized that I come alive when I'm speaking. Like even right now, right? When you ask the question and then I come alive. So that's how I figured out my passion, what I'm passionate about. And I didn't have a fear of public speaking. Serve as much as possible. You'll figure out those things. And then the last thing I would say is reverse engineer. Figure out who you want to be. If it's like, I want to be an influencer, a podcaster, they should connect with someone like you. Take you out to lunch, right? If they're ever in Hawaii, and then you can reverse engineer, say, okay, Ned, if I want to get here, what are the steps I need to take from where I'm at, like a GPS? And so I do that with everything. I'm working on writing a book. I never wrote a book. So I reached out to 2 people that did it, that gave me the roadmap. So they're there, I'm here. Now I reverse engineered it. Now I'm working. And you can do that for anything, any vocation, anything you want to do.
I think that's such great advice and wisdom, is to just make the ask. Most people want to share, especially if it's their passion, right? If somebody wants to know about how to podcast, oh man, ask me. I'd love it. And you don't have to be Otis to ask, right? It could be literally anybody. And same for you too, right? If somebody wants to ask you about the NFL or ask questions, it's like happy to share it. This is going to be a two-part question based on your story. The first part of the question is, how would you describe, or in your opinion, what is the role of the father?
You said this is a two-part question?
Yeah, well, I'm going to ask the second part after. So I want to, based on your response to this.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that's definitely a loaded question, but at its most basic and simple level, my role is to the basics: protect, provide, all of those things. But what I feel my role really is to, when I say protect, I'm talking about physically, but I would even say on a deeper level, spiritually.
Mm-hmm.
It's protecting them. The Bible says that a rich man leaves an inheritance for his children's children. And most people equate that to money, which that's a part of it. But I'm thinking even more faith. Like if I had to choose one thing, while I was hesitant to say it, it's to leave a legacy of faith.
Yeah.
Because if I can really instill in them that they know how to follow the Lord. I was talking to a friend today, and he has 6 kids. His oldest is just graduating from high school, and said, "Dad, I've watched you for the last few years, and I've seen you serve the Lord. I want to be like you." Like, to know that your son is following in the steps of the Lord, that's the biggest win, I think, as a father. So for me, it's to protect and provide for them, but not from the worldly standpoint that we often think of. Like, yes, those things too, but spiritually. Let me show you what the Word of God says on even finances. Jesus talks about money more than he talks about hell or any other subject. But also, like, I want to teach my kids. What's the quote? The quote is that hard times produce great men produce good times produce soft men. So it's like, me and my wife came from nothing. Now we're in this, nice home in Atomas, and I'm like, my kids are so advantaged. They haven't had to really work for anything yet. And so I'm like, I don't want to produce a soft, weak son. So it's like, I've been working since I was in 7th grade as a custodian, making $4.25 an hour, right? And I know what hard work means, and I'm trying to instill that in my children. So that's a part of the protection. How do I protect them? Protecting them isn't, okay, I'm making good money, let me make sure I'm buying everything for you. Like, no. Part of the protection and provision is first and foremost spiritually, but even practically. How do I allow them to go through things without it without it destroying them? I know that's a long-winded answer, but yeah, protect, provide, spiritually first and foremost.
Yeah, and I love the answer of the inheritance, right? Use the scripture base for it. And what is the inheritance? We automatically default to money. But if I think about my children's children, how are they operating as a family with faith? Is like, we all need a foundation of like how we're choosing to live our lives morally. So what is it, men, that we're passing to our kids' kids based on how we're showing up today? Love that. Okay, so here's the second part to the question. So your son's 8 years old right now.
Yeah.
Now, at 7 years old, you said, I'm going to play for the 49ers, right? And you did that. Now, how do you communicate, whether it's to your son or to, a room of 500 students, that you can pursue something without giving them false hope? And so what's your thoughts around that, right? Like, not every 8-year-old is going to go be an NFL player at the team he wants to. Talk to me a little bit about how you, as a father, walk alongside your child that has a dream.
Yeah. Is that my kids?
Yeah. And that's like the best, real quick though, like the best dad question. Yo, is that my kids right now?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I talk about this pretty much every time I'm able to do an assembly and communicate. It's like, okay, you kind of can't have a backup plan if you want to be the 0.6 that make it to the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
you have to be hyper focused. But in the same regard, in the same sense, you do have to have a backup plan because the NFL is not forever. Right? Like my son, he's athletic and he will probably be an engineer if he wants to be. And you can do that forever, right? I golf now. I can golf to the day I die. But with sports is not forever. So it's like, yes, you need to be a dog. You need to be relentless if you want to be that less than 1% that makes it. But there's never been I never had anyone come and mentor me or have a conversation around, hey, yes, you can make it, but you might be 30 years old. If you play 6-7 years, which is a long time, because the average career span back when I played was 3 years, guys are retiring at 29, 30. What are you going to do after? So both of those questions, what does it look like to reverse engineer and make it? But when it's over, if you are one of the lucky ones, the blessed ones, what does that look like? And so for me, I tell them I'm always able to fall back on my education. I only got a full ride scholarship because kindergarten through 12th grade, I had a 4.0 GPA. So I took care of scholastics. They can't take my mind away from me. And one of the things I've committed to doing is being a lifelong learner. One of my favorite things to do is to read books. It's a cheat code. One of my favorite books is Shoe Dog, Phil Knight's memoir, right? Yeah. I feel like I know him. I probably will never meet him, right? It's a cheat code.
Love it. Now, say your kid's dream is anything. So say some kid is coming to their dad saying, I want to do X, Y, or Z. It's not sports. How is it? And it seems like, dang, that's a long shot. How do you come alongside your kid and support them?
You said if it's not sports?
Yeah, say it's not. Say it could be anything. Your kid comes like, Dad, I want to do whatever. I want to be president of the United States, or I want to like something that's like, man, that is a swing. How as a dad would you suggest one support their child?
Yeah, you show them, you encourage them, even if in your mind you're like, okay, you want to be the president, like one person in the world. What are the odds?
Right.
If they say they want to be a doctor, you talk to them about the reality. So, I mean, I personally don't want my son to play football, but if he plays baseball, he plays basketball, he plays soccer, if he ever was interested, then I would tell him like, hey, here's the reality. Here's what it looks like. Here's the reality physically. Here's what I went through. Not saying this will be your experience. I probably would sit down and watch the movie Concussion with him to show him every single time you hit somebody, it's like a train wreck. Here's what's happening to your mind. In the same way I watched, my wife just watched The Social Experiment with my oldest daughter, talking about the ramifications of social media and having a phone, right? We're not telling them, we're just showing them what it is, showing them the truth. And so I would walk alongside of them and show them, here's all the work it really would take to accomplish this. If you want to go down this path, I'm going to journey with you. It's like all the sports that they're doing, and my son's in chess club, early engineers club, we're just seeing where they come alive and what they do. And we're pushing them in that direction and encouraging them also while we're sharing our stories and letting them know that it's okay if you fail. That's fine. I don't even care if they win or lose their basketball games, soccer games. We want you to try hard. We want you to work hard. We want you to do your best effort. And we want you to model what it looks like to be a child of God when you're playing your sports. If you don't win, so what? Continue to try. You'll get better.
Love it. So these three words just really stuck out is encourage them, but expose them, right? Expose them to realities, not to discourage them because you're also encouraging them. And then lastly is like, you got to put effort in. So whatever it is, like, don't just say, I want, a Ferrari and then do nothing about it. You got, like speaking things into existence is like, I say it and then I'm going to go do it.
Right.
So thinking about growing up, you mentioned your dad. What's something that your dad did well?
Something that my dad did well, he instilled in us hard work, like not complaining, working hard. So even though he was a raging alcoholic, he'd be in his right mind all day, and he would stop by the liquor store on the way home and would be out of his mind by the time he got home. That's another story. If you want to ask me about it, I'll share that with you. But he instilled in us how to work hard. He was in the Army, grew up in Compton, wanted to get us out the hood, moved us to the Bay. Did a couple tours in the Army. Back then, there was no self-care. There was no therapist. He was he didn't have a father that ever poured into him. So he did the best that he could. But he instilled in us, you work hard, you don't complain. And so some of that ended up being a little bit detrimental because I was operating from the the wrong standpoint, like men don't cry, that kind of
Mm-hmm.
deal. Like
Yeah.
you don't journal, you don't cry. And in a way that helped me kind of be hard growing up and through sports, but through my relationship with Christ and being transformed by the renewing of my mind, like I'm now an empathetic crier. Like God has softened me. But I mean, like I said, me and my brother both worked hard. So when I was in seventh grade, I was a custodian at what would end up being my high school. And I worked every summer there from seventh grade all the way up until I graduated. Got my letter of intent to come play football at Sac State.
Mm. So the second part to the question, and you kind of open the gate so you can answer it, is what's something you wish your dad did differently?
Yeah. So going back to the last question, like what just came to mind as you're asking the follow-up question was my dad taught us that everything you do, you don't have to necessarily want to do it or even enjoy it. But there'll be periods or seasons of life where as a man, you just got to get it done.
Yeah.
And you even have to learn how to do things that you don't want to do so you can set yourself up to do things that you want to do in the future.
That's good.
And then the follow-up question was something that I wished. I wish that that he didn't resort to alcohol.
Yeah.
Because, for the first 30 plus years of my life, it was absolute chaos. But then again, I can say, everything happens for a reason, right?
Of course.
And it helped shape me and form me into the man I am today. And a lot of lessons I learned about fatherhood were learning who I didn't want to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It's wild that, 42 years old, the impact that we can reflect on how our father, influenced our life. Our fathers have such an influence, good, bad, or good or bad. And so I bring it up, especially for men to know that the things that you and I are going to go do today have an impact on our kids, right? They're going to have a way they feel about us at age 42. And so it's the things that you and I do today that are going to impact what they say. Otis, when did you embrace fatherhood, right? So there's this moment where you hear you're going to be a dad to, you see this baby be born, which is the most beautifully barbaric moment. And then, to when they're crawling and walking and talking, at what point did it hit you like, oh man, this matters. I need to show up for this.
Yeah. You see your wife, your childhood, your high school sweetheart, you see her, and she's a little slim thing, all belly, and it doesn't hit you. At least I don't know for you, Ned, but for me, the minute I saw the baby come out,
Yeah,
and I started weeping, man, like uncontrollably. I didn't even know why. It was just like this is like it, I don't understand people that say they don't believe in God. Like if you've witnessed that, like that is a miracle. And like that God used you to help create with your spouse, or your significant other. And I'm like, man, that's when it became real for me. It's like, dude, some of these childish ways, man, it's time. Like this baby, that's why it's awesome that the Bible refers to like, you can't enter the kingdom unless you come like a child. You're like, okay, what does that mean? You have a child and you realize like, number one, this is like, it's hard to really understand. God loves my child more than I do.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, how? I would do anything for those kids. And he's like, no, I love them way more than you do, which is so humbling and even emotional just thinking about it. But it's the fact that this child now is completely dependent upon us.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing. God wants us to come to him like that. But we start to get smarter. We get muscles. We get a little wisdom, and we want to go our own way and do our own thing. Like God's like, nah, remember how your children are right now. They're completely dependent upon you. I forgot what the question was, but
It was when you embraced fatherhood, and it's so funny because I feel the same way. Last night, my brother and his wife are here, and we were sitting around the dinner table, and we were talking about God and faith and whatnot. And I said the same thing. Like, if you've witnessed the birth of a child, especially your own, it's like, how can I not say that there's a specific design and plan, right? And even how you mentioned the uncontrollable weeping, it's like, I'm witnessing a miracle and I got to be a part of this. Like, it's the most amazing, and I always say barbaric because like our world's so kind of like tidy and perfect, and you see a baby be born, you're like, damn, this is intense and wild,
Right.
and beautiful at the same time. Um, was there any shifts that you had to make in being a father, from going from, being in the NFL and having, that sort of life, to then coming into fatherhood? Did you find that you had to make any shifts mentally, spiritually?
Yeah, two big shifts, or three. Financially.
Mm,
So you go from having nothing to being in the NFL, and there's a certain lifestyle. I was only in the NFL for a year and a half. I played 6 more years in other leagues, right?
mhm,
And you have a little bit more money than you ever saw growing up. So financially, it's like now I have a wife, I have a family, and this is our first child of who knows how many at the time, right? So financially, I need to actually budget. I'd never done that
mm, yeah.
before. So there's that piece, and then there's everyone doubted me throughout my playing career before I made it professionally. So now I had to get to this point to where my mindset was, it's just me. It's just me. I need to communicate better. I need to come out of my shell. And, my upbringing of you don't cry, men don't cry, don't do this. Like with my wife, I had to learn how to be softer and communicate how I was feeling. Like, men don't have feelings. And she's like, you're tripping. Like, you do have feelings. You're mad right now. You just don't want to say that
Mm,
you're frustrated. And so now I have no problem. I tell her exactly how I feel. Like, babe, I don't, what you said wasn't bad, but I don't think you understood how you looked and you're communicating what you said. We have those type of conversations now.
mm,
I think the third thing is spiritually. Like, I learned how to take God at his word. Matthew 6:33 is one of my life verses. Seek ye first. So before I grab my phone in the morning, thank you, God, for putting this breath in my lungs. Thank you for waking me up.
mm,
Before I go on Instagram or check a text message or email, I need to spend some time in your presence.
mm. What helped you shift to be able to be more emotionally intelligent, emotionally in tune, to be able to share how you feel with your wife? Because I think a lot of us men struggle with that. And so, was there a book or a counseling or conversation or anything you could pinpoint that helped you to make that transition?
It's community. So
Mm,
having, like, what I share in assemblies is, who are you around?
yeah.
Right. So I have people that are around me that can lovingly call me out, challenge me, they encourage me. It's not a bunch of people that are like, looking at me as NFL player. I just want to be around you. Like, no, my brother who's 15 months older, who's a pastor and a principal, my friend who played the NBA for 14 years and has several companies, my mom, all these people that can challenge and encourage me. And
Yeah.
one of my friends, he encouraged me to read this book called Not a Fan.
Hmm.
This is in 2012. At that point in my life, outside of school, I had never read a book on my own cover to cover.
Hmm.
And this is like a 150-page book. I read it in 2 nights. I still have the
Wow.
original copy, highlighted, underlined.
Nice.
It talks about what it really means to be a committed follower of Christ. And
Hmm.
so that really woke me up. I was in I was in um, San Antonio, Texas, when I read the book, and I was coaching. I was a recruiter for an expansion arena team, and I just stayed up like till 2 a.m. 2 nights in a row reading that book, and it just changed everything for me.
Was there one particular point that that book made that hit you?
Yeah, it made me realize in many ways I was a fan of Jesus and
Hmm.
wasn't really following him. It talked about this guy that went to some jungle in Africa that was uninhabited by some cannibals, and he just kind of sold. Well, the story is like he sold himself into slavery just so he can be around this people group
Hmm.
and minister the gospel to them. And I was like, I would never do that. Like, it made me start to really question: am I really a follower
Hmm.
of Christ? So stories like that, that really was a wake up call for me. And then my community, growing up, it was a lot of just like soft Christianity and, go to vacation Bible school, which are things you should do, go to church, which are things you should do. But as I grew and had community, people that were older, people that I wanted to be like and be around, everyone started challenging me, different books to read, different
Hmm.
scriptures, entering into an actual discipleship relationship where I'm being called out on things. It changed everything.
Yeah, accountability. So I think it's super important for people to hear this. Like, so the question was, how did you shift to have better communication with your wife, essentially, and more in tune with yourself? And your answers were community and accountability. And man, so many of us are isolated. Like us men, we carry the weight of the family on our shoulders. We don't talk to anybody about it. We may have friends that we just kind of do the same old stupid things with, sit around and BS and have a beer, and which is fine. But also, are you creating opportunity, creating space for vulnerability, openness, and honesty? And so I think that's really important. Men really need to have accountability in their life. When you think of accountability, or if you were talking to a dad, what would be some? I mean, you shared friends, but what are your thoughts around accountability? Anything else come to mind?
Yeah, I mean, even as I think about I would say find someone who is more, I mean, yeah, I could just be blunt and say older, more seasoned,
Yeah.
who's lived life that you genuinely have a respect for.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have an older white gentleman named Pastor Rich that knows the word inside and out. If he was in this car right now, you can say a scripture, he would tell you who wrote it, what time period, and it just blows my mind.
Wow.
But again, you talk about reverse engineering. That's how I want to be, like a walking encyclopedia. And so I spend time with him. Every week, we have a set time that we're on a call, and I have to be ready because I know he's going to challenge me and ask me some questions. Yesterday, I came out of a meeting. I heard some news. I texted him and said, "Can we talk?" Right. So we talked for like 30 minutes yesterday. So it's finding that person who's farther along in their walk with you that you respect, that can lovingly encourage and challenge you on some things and hold you accountable. Like it forces me to grow in my walk, even as a man, because I know that it's not just going to be some like light conversations. He's challenging me. He came to my house when me and my wife were going through the toughest point in our marriage, where I heard the word divorce for the first time in my life, and that's not a word that we use.
Yeah.
That's how bad it was. And he came to our home and poured into us and held me accountable for my actions, challenged her lovingly on some things as well. So find that person that you can regularly meet with.
Yeah, guys, this is critical. Like, for success in life, can't do life alone. Who are you accountable to, right? Who are you accountable to? And you can go pick that person, right? And then you got to be the one who's open and honest with them. And then who are you giving some space for, that they could call you when they're having a hard time, that you are also speaking into their life? It needs to go both ways. So something to consider, dudes. Otis, when you think about the 11 years that you've been a dad, right? Your oldest is 11, is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. What's something that you've learned about yourself through that process, right? Like, you are a learner, you are a growth-minded individual, and our kids teach us a lot. Is there anything that you could say, man, by being a father, I learned X, Y, or Z?
Yeah, from my son, I learned that I'm very justice oriented. I didn't know that until I saw him. He'll get so mad. Sometimes he'll start, like, tears will start welling up in his eyes. He's like, what's right is right, what's wrong is wrong. I don't care who you are. And I realized, dang, I am just like that, right?
Yeah.
I will call you. I don't care if you're a lead pastor, if you're the president. I don't care. What's right is right, what's wrong is wrong. But also, I have no problem doing that because I do it to my own self first. It's not on some Pharisaical hype. It's like, no, I do that in my own life. I never needed a coach to yell at me or cuss me out. I was on myself. I would say that. And with my oldest daughter, I've learned that, I think we all struggle with selfishness, but having kids, it exposed to me that, Psalm 139, search my heart, create me a pure heart, that I was really selfish. And now that I have 3 kids, it's like, you can't just do what you want to do. Coming up playing football, kind of had to get in this mode to where it's about me, right? And it's about me. Then you realize it's about team. And then you have your own team, your own family. It's like, man, I can't operate like this. And so, again, that accountability, it helped in me journeying and walking through, how do I get better in this area that I need to grow in.
Yeah, that's good. What about what about, was there anything that you've been stuck in your ways on? You're like, I'm stuck in my ways on this thing, but by having kids and then obviously a wife, that you're like, you got softened or shifted. So like for me, I'll just give it a little silly examples. Like I am anti-pets. I just think that it's a waste and it's ridiculous. Why am I going to buy this animal that is just going to poop and pee and I'm going to have to feed? But now we have a dog after years of me being stuck in my ways because I saw my family just wanted it so bad and I was making it about me. So is there anything that you were stuck in your ways on and you made a shift on?
Not really. I mean, if there's anything, so I'm right in line with you on. I guess I say I'm still stuck in my ways on pets. I think
Yeah.
I have this quote that's "Don't tell me you're broke if you have if you have a pet.
Oh,
You can't tell
yeah.
me you're broke because
Yeah.
get rid of that pet." I had a friend that just dropped $3,800 on his dog that injured its leg. So I'm like, you're not really broke if you have a pet. It's just like another child. You have to walk it. If you go on vacation, anyways. Yes, we
You're
think
on Team
exactly the
Ned for the
same
pets.
way.
Okay. Thank you for that. Most
If
people want to
any of
shoot
my
me.
daughters wanted a dog, I'm just not budging on that. But I think the one thing that I did change was sports. So growing up, it's just like both of us. My wife was a hooper and ran track. So it's like we want them to play the sports that we play. Or my wife, even selfishly, I want them to play indoor sports. I don't want to be outside. But it's just like, man, nah. What do they want to play? Where do we see them coming alive? What are they good at? And we're letting them try all kind of things from STEM classes to karate, taekwondo, soccer. None of us ever played soccer. So we buzzed on that and we see our oldest daughter thriving, playing comp soccer right now.
So this is a great question. Well, that's very humble of me to say. A great thought for you to answer is, what do you think the purpose of sports is? So, it's like you could be the dad who's like all on your boy to play football and you're coaching and you're in it and it's like, just 24/7. Doesn't seem like that's the case for you. So since it's not, what is the point of our children, elementary, middle, and high school, playing sports?
Yeah, social, emotional development, learning how to be a team player, even for preparing you to have a family, right? Because there's so many things I learned. Um, Unless you golf regularly, you wouldn't understand this. Like, I would say if you go hoop with somebody, like an open gym, you learn a lot about somebody. You learn if they're a quitter because you get tired fast hooping. You learn if they're a quitter, if they're not willing to play defense. But now golfing, I'm like, man, I golf with people, even pastors sometimes. I see people cheat. I see people cuss. But you learn there's so many life lessons that sports teaches you. In golf, you usually have a caddy, right? Your caddy's your mentor. That's the accountability. Nah, don't think about this shot. Do this shot. You can hit a 300-yard drive and then, chunk the next one and hit a terrible shot. But it's indicative of life because you just got to keep going, right? You can't get too high or too low. And so for me, sports has taught me how to endure. It's taught me how to build resilience. It's taught me how to keep going. It's taught me how to trust and depend on other people. As a receiver, the snapper has to get the ball to the quarterback. The line has to block. The quarterback has to make the right reads before I ever even get the ball thrown to me, before I ever even get a chance to showcase my abilities and skills. And so it's learned me to trust. It's taught me how to trust others, how to be coachable. But I think the number one thing is it's taught me how to be resilient and be a team player.
How should parents view sports? Like, how should parents, and do you see any problems with it? Do you see, like, in some aspects, I think our kids' sports, or maybe sports in general, is like our religion in America. Like, and I sometimes feel like parents are a little too intense about it. And so do you think there's a problem? And maybe problem's the wrong word. How would you suggest fathers show up for their kids when it comes to sports? What's his role in the whole thing? That's a better way to ask.
Yeah, I think we kind of already touched on it. Their role is so here's my perspective. When I'm at the games, I don't coach. Even if my son played football and I'm a former NFL player, I let the coaches coach. Oftentimes it's a dad that sacrificed to take time after getting off work. I didn't volunteer to coach. So I'm not going to show up to the game yelling at my son while the coach is trying to talk to him. Our job as fathers is to take him out right now. Take him out and pour into him. Take him out and show him what you need to show him. Uh, Sports is definitely like a religion. I think parents need to reverse engineer and go over the practical standpoint of like, what are the odds that your child's going to make it professionally? A half of 1%, if not less than, is less than that.
Yeah.
So knowing that that is the truth, your child is probably not going to make it. What are the things you want them to know? Like, what are the things that are values for your family? And so for me, it's like pouring to them, show them the ropes behind the scenes at the game. You're not going to hear me. I'm watching, I'm enjoying, I'm encouraging, I'm cheering on, knowing that my child, even though both of us played at a high level, mother and father, there's still not a good chance that they'll ever make it professionally. And what's more important is that even if they did, sports ends, they're going to have to stand before Christ one day, and he's not going to ask them about how well he did or did he bat 400, right? What are the non-negotiables? What are the most important things for your children? It's not sports, but it's hard because their cousins, their friends are all playing sports, so they feel this pressure. Travel ball, drop thousands of dollars to do it, and you're like, your whole world revolves around that. And then all of a sudden they get to high school and only 1% of them is even going to make it to college.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I like how you said that is like, what is your intention for your kid? What is it that you want to teach them? Now, sports could be an aspect of how they learn those character traits, but make sure that those are the conversations you're having. All right, Otis, 2 last questions for you. The first one, the podcast is Fatherhood Field Notes. We're doing it. You're just opening up your life, sharing your field notes with us. The theme or mantra is rebel and create. As men, we're warriors. We want to rebel against something. We want to fight against something, but not to leave it destructive, but to create something in its place. So when you think about this for yourself, what's something that you are rebelling against, and what do you hope to create in its place?
Yeah, I am rebelling. My favorite movie or top 5 is The Matrix, the original one. I believe in a sense that it is very real. And so The Matrix to me is the duality, a reality that God is every good and perfect gift comes down from him. He's given us all specific gifts, talents, and abilities. And the world or the Matrix tries to distract us from fulfilling those things or having those things come to fruition. For instance, I know God's called me to write a book. Like 10 years ago, I'm just now writing it. I get caught up in the matrix of scrolling mindlessly on this phone, looking at other people who are having success in their lives, commenting on this athlete who does not know you, right? And so I'm rebelling against the matrix of being caught up in culture and mindlessly wasting my life. The scariest thing to me, Ned, is being on my deathbed. Like, this is a legitimate fear. Being on my deathbed and being like, dang, I didn't accomplish none of the things that I knew I was put here to do. Because I was so involved with everything else going on that really was of no consequence.
Yeah, man, beautiful. Well said. And I think good for us to consider. So with that being said, the deathbed, here's my last question. Imagine, let's say 30 years from now, your early 70s, your kids are moved out. They're close to your age today. They're living in their homes. If you were to stand out in the street and look and peer through the windows of their homes, what is it you would hope to see that would put a smile on your face, a tear in your eye, knowing that you showed up and did your job as a father? What would you see inside those homes?
Yeah, it's a blessing to already kind of see it now. Like, hear my kids, the songs that they're singing. I'm thinking they're not listening, but they're singing, praise and worship songs. And they're like listening to some of the sermons and messages, like they're getting it. So even as you're asking the question, that is joy. Like joy, not because of what's happening, just because of that joy that's been placed deep inside their soul from them knowing, loving, and living out a life of following Christ. And so that joy, just joy from on their faces, joy with their children. I always had this vision of being this, old gray haired man with my wife and just us sitting on the couch, just looking around with the biggest smile on our faces during Thanksgiving, and seeing all our children and our grandchildren, and just knowing that, as we prepare to transition out of life, whenever that may be, that we went all in and we died on empty.
Okay, 2 things. One, I love the answer singing. No one's ever said singing. But when you hear a little kid walking and singing, it's like such a pure thing, right? So I mean, it can only come from joy, and it doesn't matter what's going on circumstantially in life. They're choosing joy in the moment. So beautiful, beautiful answer. And then dudes listening, I encourage you, as soon as this podcast ends, set a timer for 3, 4, 5 minutes and close your eyes and visualize yourself at age 70 in your home with your wife, if you're married, on Thanksgiving. What is it you see? What is it you feel? What is it you hear? You know, are your kids like, oh, there goes dad again? Are your grandkids going, oh, grandpa won't do this? What is it you want to be happening in that room? And then start to live a life moving towards that. I think is beautiful, Otis. Otis, thank you so much for the man you are, for the way that you love your wife, your kids, the world, how you're constantly growing so that you can show up well in God's kingdom, serving him and everybody that he puts along your path. Continue being the man that you are. Thank you for your time today. So appreciate the opportunity to connect with you.
Man, grateful for the invitation and glad we were able to finally catch up and do this.
All right, my friend, until next time. What an incredible conversation. I loved so much of it, just hearing Otis share his own story, his life, and his transformations, his dedication to his wife, his kids, and to personal development and growth. The one thing as I kind of sit and reflect on our conversation that I really want to spend a little bit more time thinking about is that idea of being that old man, gray hair, sitting on the couch while Thanksgiving's playing out and thinking, you know, on that perfect Thanksgiving where my 5 kids are there and their spouses are there and all the grandkids are there. What is it that's happening there, and who does Ned need to become for that reality to be? And so I challenge you. I said it, but when this ends, just set a timer for 3 to 5 minutes. Maybe go journal, jot it down in the notes on your phone. Just paint a picture in your mind of what you want that to be. And is there any shifts you need to make to become the man who will be able to sit on that couch or be in the presence of that scenario that you envision? All right, my friends, if this is helpful, if you are enjoying these podcasts, if you're still listening, please write a review. It helps spread the word that fatherhood matters, that when you and I get up out of our beds every day to go love and serve our family, that we know we're not alone. We're doing this together. And with that in mind, shoot a text to a friend. Hey, here's a podcast. I think you'll enjoy it. I think you're a great dad. And this is just supporting dad. So the idea is that you have the opportunity to speak life into others, and this is a great way that you could share that with somebody. Thank you to all you dads out there listening to the Fatherhood Field Notes podcast. What you do matters. It matters so much, you guys. Don't be like everybody else. Be yourself. That's who your kids, spouse, and community needs. This is your guide, Ned Shout. Together, let's rebel against the view that fatherhood has little impact, and let's create lives engaged in mastering the craft of fatherhood. I look forward to hanging out with you next week.